Hi there. Welcome to today's session of Every Mark Matters with me, Mr. McDonald's. Today we are going to have a look at Edexcel History, Paper 2, the American West. And our question of the day is explain the importance of the end of open range ranching for the cattle industry. And just like similar questions, what we're going to do is we're going to break up the components that make the question to really understand how or what the exam board wants us to do. So our first element is the command phrase. And in this instance, it's explain the importance. And truthfully, what this is actually the exact same as an explain why. And because of that, I'm just going to add this here. So I'm going to say same as explain why. So that's on a paper, on the other half of the paper 2 paper, the medicine paper and paper 3. So what I'll actually do then, I'm just going to turn this question into an explain why. So let's do this. So explain why the end of open range ranching was important for the cattle industry. That's all it is. So it is the exact same as an explain why. So when you're structuring it, it is the exact same. Okay, let's have a look at what relevant knowledge we actually need for this question. And in essence, what it is the end of the open range ranching. So here's our focus. Do you want to now double check your notes? Think about what you know and annotate the word focus with knowledge that you've got that's relevant to the focus of this question. So take the time now, press pause and annotate as many facts as you can. Okay, right, let's just have a quick look then. So let's think about open range ranching. Now remember, let's just define what open range ranching is. Right, so open range ranching, that is where cows can free roam on the Great Plains. You know, you've got tens of thousands of cows just freely roaming around the Great Plains, and you'd have cowboys sort of like nurturing them and make sure that they're eating enough grass and not wandering off. All right, and this is a concept created by John Iliffe in 1870. Okay, now this is actually talking about the end of open range ranching. So think about what is the event that ends open range ranching, and that is the Great Die-Up. And again, the Great Die-Up, that's where 15% of cattle die in a harsh winter. You know, that is in the winter of 1886 to 87. All right, so let's begin to think about why is this important. Okay, so you've got your cattle. They're wandering around the Great Plains, but now this winter has killed 15% of your cattle, maybe even more than that. You know, are you going to allow them to wander about onto the Great Plains again? Absolutely not. You're going to start shoving them inside, but you can't shove tens of thousands of cattle into one barn, so you're going to have to change your business, and you're going to have to go to smaller ranches. Okay, because remember, they do better. They do better in the Great Die-Up, because obviously they can sort of store their cattle inside the barns. So if we go to smaller ranches, that's less cattle, then that changes, that affects the role of the cowboy. You know, the cowboy, you know, if you consider before open range ranching was going on long drives, taking cattle tens of thousands of miles all the way up to the north, then when open range ranching comes along and they're just like wandering around the Great Plains caring for the cattle that they own, Now, with smaller ranchers, in essence, their role completely changes, whereby some of them are probably unemployed. So if you're an experienced cowboy, you suddenly all of a sudden you're most likely going to become unemployed. If you're a young cowboy, maybe you adapt to it if you get to stay in your job, but it's possible that you're just going to turn to alcoholism or gambling or, or crime, because what's happening is your career has completely changed because of the Great Die-Up, you know? So yeah, let's put that in there. So we've got a loss of jobs. The role has changed. The way I view the way that the cowboys' role changes on small ranches would be similar maybe in a modern day cattle farm today, where they literally just make sure it's been well fed, they're looking after it, looking after the cattle and stuff like that. They're not like wandering Great Plains having loads of freedom. They are stuck in a small piece of land where they probably will be able to sleep there, but they're going to be on low pay. Okay, right, let's have a quick look then at the second order concept. So our second order concept for this question is importance. And this is really important here because when you're doing your analytical explanation, what you need to be doing is you need to be making sure you're using the phrase, this was important because. And in essence, by doing that, you are just regurgitating the language in the question. Now, this is an 8-mark question. So unlike the explain why, where you do 3 paragraphs, you are only doing you're only going to spend 10 minutes and you're only going to do 2 paragraphs, not 10 paragraphs. That would be wild. Okay? So let's think about, we've broken up what the question is asking us to do. Allow me to present to you the mark scheme and what it wants you to do. And I really want to express to you that it's super similar to a explain why for paper 1 or paper 3. So allow me to show that to you. So success criteria. And again, just like on paper 1 and paper 3, you're going to be assessing AO1 and AO2. That's knowledge. And this is explanation. And just like on those, you will be banded, or you will be put into levels of, it's technically, I always get it wrong, it's level 2 and level 3 for American West. But I always put level 3 and level 4 because I'm just so used to doing it for medicine. But it's level 2 and level 3 for American West, and we are going to go really high up. Alright? So if you're level 3, that is, you are getting 6 to 8 marks. Okay? That's what we're going for. Obviously we're going for A. Alright, so allow me to demonstrate how would you get level 2 knowledge. That is simple, just like for medicine or USA or any paper 3 subject where you're doing an explain why. That is 2 facts per para. Okay, then what you're doing for level 3, as in the highest band, it is 2 precise facts. In terms of your explanation, you need to have 2 sentences of explanation. And then finally, for level 3, the highest band, you need to make sure you've got 3, that's per paragraph by the way, per para. 3 sentences of explanation. And that is how, why, so what. The exam board called this analytical explanation. So in essence, what you're doing is you're analytically explaining how or why the end of the upper range is important for the cattle industry. And allow me just to demonstrate what I mean by that. So your how is, how did X lead to Y? Your why is, why did X lead to Y? I missed that with 2 there. So what? Why is X important? And you're going to use that word there when you're referring to importance. Okay? So, ladies and gents, you have got 10 minutes, or you'll need 10 minutes to have a go at answering this question. Take the time now, press pause, put all distractions away, and take the time to have a go at answering this question where you explain the importance of the end of the open range ranching for the cattle industry. Set a timer, press pause, and I'll see you shortly. Welcome back. Okay, so let's have a look then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through my answer because I'm very conscious of my ugly handwriting. And what I'm going to do is, as I'm reading through my answer, I'm going to annotate AO1 and AO2. AO1 is your knowledge, AO2 is your explanation. If I use a precise fact, I might put AO1 plus. Okay? Right, let's get started then. One reason why the end of open range ranching was important for the cattle industry was because of the impact it had on the cowboys. Right, there's AO2. Alright, so what I've done is it's simple, you get 1 mark for it, is I've just presented a reason why. It's not a great deal of explanation, but I've just I've just demonstrated a reason. For example, love for example is a nice little description phrase, or, you know, a phrase that demonstrates you're about to describe some of your own knowledge. For example, during the Great Die-Up, AO1, of 1886 to 87, AO1 plus, many cowboys died, along with 15% AO1 of cattle on the open range. When the open range closed, many responsibility of the cowboys ended too. Right, so there's my first fact. Okay, so I've said there that 15% of cattle died, as long as many cowboys, and when they all closed, the responsibilities changed. Right, let's have a quick look at my second fact. Additionally, again, it's another great way to demonstrate your second fact or add in a bonus fact. Additionally, before the Great Die-Up, most cowboys lived adventurous lives by taking cattle on long drives or by herding the cattle. The end of open range. Oh, there we go. Right, so there's my second fact. Nice and slim, but it's not too bad at all because I've compared it to before the Great Die-Up. So what was their life like before the actual event that ended the open range? Right, so now what I need to do is I need to make sure I am explaining how. The end of open range ranching led to, it's this phrase here that led to, that begins your how, led to the role of the cowboy changing as they became ranch hands who managed smaller ranches. There's the how. And as I said to you, just for the sake of your imagination, you know, in essence, they are what we would view like modern day cattle farmers. They're literally just moving cows from A to B on the farm. They're just looking after them, making sure they're alive and so on. You know, they're not going on massive long drives across the country, discovering new places and so on. As a result, many cowboys lost their jobs and even turned to alcoholism as they struggled with the change. There's the why. This was important because this is a great phrase. It directly answers the question because it sparks the beginning of the end of one of the iconic roles of the American West. And there's the so what. Okay, so you can see there is I've presented a reason, I've backed it up with 2 facts. I've gone how, why, so what. How did it lead to the end of the? How did it have an impact on the role of the cowboy? Why did it have an impact on the role of the cowboy? So what? Why is the end of open range ranching important for the role of the cowboy? Okay, let's have a look at my second one. Another reason why the end of open range ranching was important for the cattle industry was the move to small ranches. Right, perfect. There's AO2. I know that smaller ranches did better in the Great Die-Up. I love this phrase, I know, because again, it's very similar to I know from my own knowledge, or I also know that, or for example, but it's a good phrase just to demonstrate your knowledge. I know that smaller ranches did better in the Great Die-Up, which meant that other bigger ranches began to copy them. Right, perfect. There's my first fact. Okay, so again, I've mentioned about the fact that the smaller ranchers did better in the open range ranching. In the Great Die-Up, sorry. I also know that these were easier to manage as cattle were fenced off and put. I also know that these were easier to manage as the cattle were fenced off to put off the cattle rustlers and could be brought inside during the harsh winters. Again, there's my second fact. All right. And again, I'm just going to find where I've put fenced off. That is the epitome of the ending of the open range ranching. You know, rather than have them wandering around, freely to do whatever they want to eat the grass of the Great Plains, they are now fenced in. They are no longer in the open. Okay, let's have a look at how the how, why, so what. This led to better quality meat, which the prices gradually increased. Fabulous. There's the how. As a result, thousands of cattle ranchers moved to smaller ranches producing better quality meat, which allowed the industry to recover. There's the why. This was important because this decision kept the industry alive, but had a significant impact on the other elements of the industry, like the cowboys. And there's the so what. And you'll see there throughout that entire page there, it's just a 2-page answer. This one is what I've done is I've presented a reason, backed it up with 2 facts, how, why, so what. Again, first paragraph, presented a reason, backed it up with 2 facts, how, why, so what. So if I go back to here, I've got 2 facts in every paragraph, how, why, so what in every paragraph. So this would probably, a harsh examiner would call it as 8, because I think I lack precise facts in the second one. But a generous examiner would give it 8. So 7, 8 out of 8 is pretty good there. Take the time to self-assess yours. Thank you very much for your hard work. And I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.